So I've spent the last few weeks scraping the internet trying to find a Tamika World Amtrak Super Spiral set, which was one of my favorite childhood toys growing up. I sold mine to the legendary Playrail YouTuber UC Weapon like 15 years ago, and I miss it. But this got me thinking, when was the last time I saw a toy train in a store? Not a Christmas battery-powered set or a Thomas something or other, but a true blue toy train set. From my earliest memories going to train shows and clubs, I remember people always discussing how the hobby needed more young people to get interested in it, or how our beloved passion for trains wasn't as popular with younger kids as it was. And while I don't think that's necessarily true, I do think there is one thing the hobby is sorely lacking, and we're going to talk about that in today's video. So what do I mean by toy trains? What are some examples of them? And where did they go? What happened to toy trains? And why is it so important to our beloved hobby that we figure out where they went? People sometimes use the phrase toy trains to describe Lionel or American Flyer or Marx trains, and while that term is very subjective, I don't think it's necessarily the way I would use it. When I think of toy trains, I think of trains specifically designed only for kids, usually battery operated or manually powered. When I was a kid in the early 2000s, I felt like there were almost more than enough toy train systems. On top of the always popular Thomas & Friends ranges, we had Geotrax, Tamika World, Power Trains, Maisto on Track, New Bright, Brio, Imaginarium, Melissa and Doug, Whittle Wooden Rail. I could name so many toy train systems, but the point is, any store you went to had a train system that was expandable, affordable, and aimed at kids. Of those, my favorite was probably Tamika World, the series they brought to the States when I was a kid. But the one thing that all of these sets have in common is you could expand them and treat them like they were your model train layout until you eventually graduated to the real trains. We all remember our first electric train set. Many of us started off with a beginner set in whatever scale it may be, and for me it was O-gauge. But what I don't see people talk about a lot is our first toy train. Not our first Lionel or Bachmann set, but our first toy train designed to be played with by kids. However, I know for a fact that almost all of us had one. In a lot of ways, these toy trains are as important to the hobby as those O and HO starter sets are. Many parents aren't going to want to spend $250 on something they don't know if their kids will stay interested in, but they'll likely be happy to spend $20 to $40 on a train instead. I went to a Target and a Walmart in preparation for this video just to see what the toy train variety available was, and to my disbelief, there was nothing. How did we go from easily half a dozen toy train companies being available at any major retailer to nothing in just roughly a decade? I think the last time I saw Power Trains on the shelves was probably 2018 or so, and the others all died off somewhere before then, or at least stopped being available at the major retailers. Well, I've pondered quite a bit about this over the last week, and I think I've come to two reasons that companies are hesitant to produce toy train lines. For one, the iPad, social media, and the impact it has had on children's attention spans. But this can really apply to everything, and is honestly a much bigger topic than I want to discuss on my Little Train YouTube channel, so we'll leave it at that. The second and main reason that I've come up with is the decline in popularity of Thomas & Friends. Like it or not, Little Baby Blue is the reason so many of us love trains. Thomas has been a gateway into the train hobby since the 80s. The show has always been huge, but since 2015 or so, it has royally tanked in popularity. There are plenty of great Thomas-centric YouTubers that can go into further detail about that, but the point is pretty simple. Thomas is not as big as it was when we were kids. You might be asking, what does Thomas's popularity have to do with non-Thomas related trains? After all, I did mention earlier the reason that I love Brio and Geotrax and all these other brands is because they make non-Thomas trains. Well, there's something undeniable, my friends, and that is that Thomas is the most popular train ever. Bigger than the Polar Express, bigger than the Hogwarts Express, the Super Chief, everything. Thomas is the train, and the toy industry operates on demand. And so if the most popular train toy isn't selling, why would Mattel's competitors want to hop on a bandwagon for a kind of toy that isn't performing? That is just my personal thought, but I think that we can attach the lack of train toys on the market to Thomas's popularity waning in the last decade. I do have hope for the future though, as Mattel has some good looking Thomas toys coming out later this year, so hopefully we'll see a resurgence of the toy train very soon. I hope you enjoyed this little essay style video. I've been thinking about this a lot lately and just wanted to share my thoughts with you guys. What would you like to see in a new train toy? Comment down below and let's have a discussion. Thank you guys for watching.